I'm Chris Harrington, the 48-year-old son and fourth child of Carl, a corporate attorney, and Mary, a nurse. An earthquake-sized tremor nearly destroyed our family home when, in the end of junior year of high school, I announced that I didn't want to attend college. My normally talkative parents were at first stunned to silence and then proceeded to make my life miserable. College was given for the Harrington children. Mom and Dad went behind my back and applied to 6 very good colleges and universities. I was accepted to them all, which increased the pressure from my entire family to attend. All except my paternal grandfather, Pops Harrington. I had been working during my vacations with my grandfather since I was 13. Pops flipped houses, long before the term flipped was used. He'd buy a rundown home, usually owned by a long-retired couple, completely renovate and update the home, and then sell it for a handsome profit. During the spring semester leading up to my junior year in high school, Pops helped me buy 2 fixer-upper houses. I spent the summer lining up contractors, electricians, plumbers, and painters and making sure the work was done properly. 2 days before Labor Day, the unofficial end of summer, I sold the second house. While my friends had spent the summer working minimum wage jobs, I had split the profits with Pops and earned almost $8,000. I flipped 3 houses during the next summer. Pops insisted that I find my own financing, although he did agree to co-sign the notes. At the end of the summer, I gave Pops 25% of my profit. I was left with a bundle of cash that would choke the average 17-year-old. Although I was an above-average student and enjoyed learning, I knew college wasn't for me. I eventually came to a truce with Mom and Dad. Together, we agreed that I would take off the year after graduating high school, but needed to reapply to colleges, and as a family, we would all decide if I would attend the following year. While my friends worked part-time summer jobs and prepared for their first year of college, I bought a used Ford F-150 pickup truck with 123,000 miles, a primitive cell phone, and started Harrington Construction. I contacted every real estate agent who would talk to me and explain the type of houses I was interested in purchasing. I committed to using them as the buying agent when I bought a home that they recommended, and as the selling agent when the renovations were complete. That's how I met the Kelly sisters. Jan and Mickey were mid-20s and relatively new agents who had recently started in real estate after finishing college. They were associates in a local franchise of a top national firm. I was currently overseeing the renovation of 2 homes when I got a call. "Hello? Chris? This is Mickey Kelly. I found a house in West Hartford and it looks like it meets your requirements. Would you like to see it?" The biggest lesson I learned from Pops was urgency. If an opportunity presented itself, I needed to be prepared to take advantage of it. I agreed to meet Mickey in 90 minutes. The house was a modest ranch. I estimated that it was built 50 years earlier. Mickey told me that it was owned by the estate of an elderly couple. They had lived in the house for nearly 35 years. Their children lived on the West Coast and were looking to dump the house and settle the estate as quickly as possible. The house was in excellent structural shape, but was run down and in need of a great deal of updating. "What do you think they'll take?" I asked Mickey. "I think it will go pretty quickly and will come close to the $89,000 asking price." I suspected she was right. "I'll offer $85,500 cash. I want 5 days to complete the due diligence process and will close within 5 days of the inspector's report, assuming there aren't any problems." Mickey was thrilled. We went back to her office, wrote and signed the offer, and sent it to the listing agent. The offer was accepted. The inspector's report came back without any surprises, and we closed on the deal 1 week later. "Let's celebrate," Mickey suggested, as we left the attorney's office after the deal was complete. "I share an apartment with my sister. It's less than 2 miles away. Let's go have a drink." I followed Mickey into her nicely decorated 3rd-floor apartment at the edge of downtown West Hartford. She let me open a bottle of Merlot and pour 2 glasses. We silently toasted and each took a sip. "I hope you don't mind if we celebrate in other ways." Pops had taught me a great deal about the real estate business, including the fact that female agents were often grateful to be working with contractors who might buy and sell multiple houses in a year. He often said, if I was younger and wasn't married to grandma, I'd take full advantage of any bonus they offered. Mickey leaned in and kissed my lips. When she pulled back and saw the smile on my face, she leaned back in and pushed her tongue into my mouth. It was a very aggressive kiss. I held my wine glass in one hand and slid my hand down Mickey's back, palmed her small, round, athletic bum, and pulled her against me. We kissed and groped for a few minutes before Mickey backed away. She handed me her glass of wine and with an ear-to-ear smile. We had wild sex after that. I was only 18, although I'd had a fair amount of sex. Most were fumbling and ultimately unsatisfying backseat romps with high school dates. I'd also become friends with benefits with 3 real estate agents, including a 43-year-old married woman, who I'll credit with teaching me most of my sexual skills. Mickey, on the other hand, was amazing in her own way. I did Mickey's sister Jazz as well. She was amazing as well. The next 5 years flew by. When I showed my parents my financial information, after the first year, they agreed that I was doing very well. They were disappointed that I wasn't going to go to college, but could see my passion for the real estate business. They supported me 100%. Starting my second full year in business, I was flipping a dozen to 15 houses a year. I was also actively looking for apartment buildings with 6 to 12 units. I'd fix each unit as tenants left and held onto the property for the rental income. I quickly discovered that managing the rental property was a royal pain in the bum. As I didn't want to be getting calls at 3 a.m. because of a broken toilet, I hired a real estate management company and let them take care of my rental properties and all the problems associated with them. Mickey and Jim both got married within 2 months of each other. I was invited to both weddings. I assumed that our play dates, including several threesomes with the sisters, were a thing of the past. I was 24 years old when Mickey and Jen invited me to dinner with their husbands and their younger sister. Kate was a recent college graduate and had been teaching at a Hartford area elementary school for 1 year. Kate had gone to school on a swimming scholarship and she was stunning. She was taller than her sisters and stood at 5 foot 9 inches. She weighed 135 pounds, had red hair and hazel eyes. Her athletic build was highlighted with long trim legs and the most gorgeous hips ever. And even better than her physical appearance was her personality. She was smart and genuine and had an easy laugh. I had a ball getting to know her over drinks and dinner, even though we were with her sisters and their husbands. I was thrilled when she agreed to let me drive her home to her parents' house at the end of the evening. We were approaching a Dunkin' Donuts shop when Kate suggested we stop and talk, since it was the first time we were alone. After getting our drinks, we found a table that afforded us a little privacy. "Listen," Kate started. "You seem like a nice guy, and under different circumstances, I think I'd like to get to know you. I'd like to get to know you too. What are your concerns? I know you've been friends with my sisters for a few years, and I know they're 304s. I'm pretty sure that they cheat on their husbands. How does that affect you and me? I won't ask if you've ever slept with either of them," Kate continued. "But if we dated, even if we weren't exclusive, you can't date my sisters." "Deal," I answered. "You also need to know that I'm not a 304. I'm far from being a virgin, but I've only had sex with guys I'm exclusive with. It's not that many men." Kate and I started dating. When I asked her out for the 4th time, I invited her to my home for a private dinner. I was thrilled when she agreed. I picked her up at her folks' house, and I think she was shocked when I pulled into the parking area behind my home. I no longer lived in a condominium. Pops and Grandma Harrington had died within 3 weeks of each other, 4 years earlier. They were incredibly generous to their children and grandchildren, leaving substantial properties from Pop's lifetime work. I inherited their old farmhouse, barn, and 73 acres in a small rural town just 20 minutes from Hartford. The acreage was filled with fruit trees, fruit bushes, and vegetables. The land was leased to a local farmer, and the income from the lease allowed me to support the property without having to invest my own money. It took me almost a year to decide to renovate the 130-year-old farmhouse and barn, and another 2 years to finish the project. When it was complete, I owned a beautiful home. The outside was neat as a pin and kept the distinct look of an old traditional farmhouse. The inside had been gutted and several walls were eliminated, so the house had a modern, open look. I'd also renovated the barn. I poured a concrete floor and made the barn into a giant garage and storage area. The back corner was turned into a gym. The second floor hayloft was converted into a modern office and was now home to Harrington Real Estate and Construction. In truth, the office was my man cave. My company only had one employee, me. I bought, renovated, and either sold the property or rented it. I subcontracted all the renovations, hired real estate agents, attorneys, finance experts, and accountants. I was a one-man show. Kate was impressed when I gave her the grand tour. I think she was also impressed with the lasagna, asparagus, and salad I served for dinner. We ate in my backyard patio, drank wine, and talked until the candles burned out. "Can I ask you something?" Kate nodded and said, "Sure. I'm enjoying getting to know you, and I want to spend more time with you." Kate's smile glowed. "I don't have any interest in dating anyone but you. Would you consider being exclusive? The smile had slowly disappeared, and I was crushed when Kate said, I need to think about it. Slowly, the smile returned. She laughed and said, I've thought about it long enough. It's about damn time you asked, and jumped into my lap and kissed me. It took nearly 45 minutes to make it to my king-size bed on the second floor of the house. We slowly kissed, touched, and undressed each other the entire time. When we fell onto the mattress wrapped in a hug, I was the happiest man alive. I'll admit that my only concern was that I'd compare Kate to her slutty sisters and would be disappointed in the quality of sex. After a very exhausting night that included sex and making love, I knew that I'd found the right sister. She loved sex just as much as her sisters, but wanted an exclusive relationship. Shortly after Kate and I were engaged, her dad called and asked if we could meet for a beer. Her parents and I were friendly, but we didn't completely click. I knew the reason. I didn't have a college education. George and I met the next day, and as usual, he got right to the point. Chris, I like you. I like you a lot, but I think it's important that you and Kate sign a prenuptial agreement. Have you talked to Kate about it? George answered, not yet, but I will. He pushed a manila folder across the table and continued, I had my lawyer put this together. The prenup was only 2 pages and basically stated that in the case of divorce, for any reason, Kate and I would keep all the assets we brought into the marriage. Kate would keep all acquired assets from her current job and any future jobs, and I would keep all the assets from my business. In case we had children, the court would set all child support payments, and we would each be required to pay $5,000 a year into a college fund. It seemed fair and fairly straightforward. I told George, I don't see any problems, but let me have my attorney take a look at it. I'll have it back to you within a week. Kate and I were married at the end of her second school year, and we took a 2-week honeymoon vacation to several Caribbean islands. While on vacation, we made a honeymoon baby, and Calais was born 9 months after our wedding. Our second daughter, Kara, arrived 16 months later, followed by the baby, Carla, 2.5 years after. Life was mostly good. In addition to her teaching responsibilities, Kate went back to school for her master's degree in education, along with a certification to be a school administrator. It was a rough 3 years, and it always seemed that Kate and I were going in opposite directions. My business was doing well. With the advancements to the internet, I was able to change the direction of my company and got out of the renovation side of the real estate business. Instead, using the access to information on the web, I searched for distressed vacation properties along the northeast coastline and ski country in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and upstate New York. When I found an appealing property, and after the normal due diligence, I'd buy the property and immediately sell it to someone who wanted to renovate it. In real estate terms, this type of transaction is known as a wholesale flip. I obviously wouldn't make as much money on each flip, but instead of 12 to 15 regular flips a year, I was completing 75 to 100 wholesale flips. I had continued to invest in residential apartments and currently owned 18 buildings with a total of 124 units. Because I had an above-average reputation within a slimy industry, I also became a partner in an investment group that loaned money to flippers. It was one of the top companies of its kind in the Northeast. The most interesting part of the change in direction for me and my companies is that the amount of time I worked on a daily basis dropped. Instead of 60-hour work weeks, including traveling from renovation project to renovation project and locating new projects, my new responsibilities required between 20 and 30 hours per work week. I was able to devote more of my precious time to my family. An average workday consisted of getting up at 4 and exercising for an hour. I'd get my loving wife and kids up to the smell of a formal breakfast every morning and have a healthy homemade lunch prepared for them to take with them. I kissed my wife and kids goodbye and watched the kids catch the school bus each morning. From 7:30 until 1 in the afternoon, I attended to work. I touched base with all of my real estate contacts looking for new wholesale flips, read the reports on our loan company, and completed 1,000 small details that were necessary in my line of work. Most days, I was able to quit work in the early afternoon, and I would get ready for the kids' after-school activities. I coached their sports teams, took them to dance class, made sure their homework was complete, and brought them home to a healthy home-cooked dinner. I was the happiest man in the world. I had a successful career and was also, proudly, Mr. Mom. During the same time frame, Kate changed careers. She left the classroom and became a school administrator. She started as a middle school vice principal, moved to an elementary school as principal, then a high school vice principal, and finally in 6 short years our school system's assistant superintendent. The biggest downside was, while my work hours decreased, Kate's increased. She was required to attend many evening sporting events and other school activities. She went to all town council and board or education meetings. However, Kate loved her work and the positive difference she made in our town, so I refused to complain. Instead, I gladly picked up the slack at home. Even with our complicated lifestyle, Kate and I made time to be together, both in and out of the bedroom. As we passed our 12th anniversary, Kate and I were having sex 3 or 4 times every week. The only real challenge to our relationship started a number of years earlier, during our 3rd year of marriage. Kate and I were sitting together celebrating Valentine's Day at our favorite local restaurant. We had just started dessert when Kate said, "I'd like to ask something, and I'd like you to keep an open mind." I'll admit that I was a little annoyed at her words and tone, and I responded, "When have I ever been closed-minded with you?" Kate rolled her eyes and said, "I just think there's a small chance that you'll get upset. So, after making reservations at our favorite restaurant and giving you a diamond pendant to celebrate Valentine's Day, you decide that it's a good time to talk about something that might upset me. Great. Go ahead. Oh, for Christ's sake, Chris. I said there was a small chance you'd get upset." I waved before Kate could continue her rant. "Just tell me what you want to talk about." Kate stared at me for close to a minute before she continued, "Mickey and Jen have been going on a 5-day cruise every spring. We've picked a cruise during my school's spring break. I'd like to go this year." I laughed and said, "Why in the world would that upset me? It sounds like a great idea. Where are we going?" Kate's initial smile turned to concern and she said, "No, you don't understand. We're planning a girls' week away." My eyes never left Kate's eyes as I reached for my wine glass and very slowly took 2 small sips. After placing the glass back on the table, I asked, "What exactly are you asking me?" Kate looked bewildered and said, "I don't understand your question. You started this conversation by asking me if you could ask me a question. What's your question, Kate? What are you asking me?" Kate took a moment to collect herself and said, "Well, I guess I'm asking you if you're okay with me going." My smile got big and I responded, "That's easy. No, I'm not okay with you going, and I am amazed that you have to ask. What's the matter with me going away with my sisters?" Kate was clearly annoyed. I was stunned. I shook my head and responded, "As you well know, Mickey and Jen are 304s. They were 304s 5 years ago when we started dating, as you pointed out. They're 304s today, after each was divorced for cheating. Your sisters are each homing devices for heat-seeking dicks, and you know it. That's what the matter is with you going without me. So, you don't trust me? That's not the question we're discussing. You asked if I was okay with you going away to dance, drink, and lay around in bikinis on a week-long cruise with your 304 sisters. I'm not okay with that and never will be." Kate took a few moments to calm herself before she said, "You can't tell me I can't go. Once again, sweetheart, that's not what we're discussing. We are discussing my feelings about you leaving your family to go on a vacation with your 2 304 sisters. I wish you would stop calling them 304s. I shrugged and said, "I wish they weren't 304s. Before we could continue, our waiter approached the table and asked if we were enjoying our dessert. When we agreed that it was delicious, she said, "Our last course is a glass of our award-winning plum wine. May I bring it to you?" Before Kate could agree, I said, "No thanks." I fished my credit card out of my wallet, handed it to the waiter and said, "Please run the card, add 20% for the tip, and bring me the receipt to sign." Kate was indignant. She raised her voice and said, "We will be staying for the wine," and to the waiter, said, "And we'll take it now." "Thank you." I suspect that the waiter knew that despite giving my wife a beautiful pendant, I wasn't getting laid at the end of our date. I smiled at the waiter and said, "Bring my wife her wine and bring her my glass too. When you've run my card, give it back to my wife and call her a cab." The waiter's eyes almost popped out of her head as I tossed my napkin on the table, stood and headed to the coat room for my jacket. After starting the car, I looked at the clock and gave Kate exactly 3 minutes to pay the tab and make her way to the parking lot. She made it with 7 seconds to spare. She was fuming as she climbed into the car. "Don't you ever embarrass me like that again. Do you understand me?" I drove for half a mile before I calmly responded, "We just finished a discussion where I was informed that I can't tell you not to go away for a week with your 304 sisters. If that's the case, you can't tell me not to embarrass you in public, and I'll do it any time I want." Kate was flabbergasted. I'd never talked to her like that before. She wisely decided to remain quiet for the remainder of our drive. I parked our car in the barn. While Kate made her way to the door that led outside into the house, I climbed the stairs to my office. "Where are you going?" "We're not finished talking. Come to the house now." I was halfway up the stairs. I turned and yelled, "Who the hell do you think you're talking to? Don't ever again tell me what to do." Kate was standing with her jaw unhinged when I slammed my office door behind me. The temperature in our home varied over the next few weeks from frosty to Arctic cold. Depending on the temperature, I slept in my office many nights. It was 4 days before Kate was scheduled to leave when she cornered me in my office. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Sure." I pointed to a chair and said, "Please, have a seat." Kate stared at me for quite a while before she said, "I don't want to leave with you mad at me." I shrugged and said, "There's an easy way to change my mood. Chris, I'm going on the cruise." "That's final." We sat quietly for a few moments before I asked, "Can I say a few things?" After Kate nodded in agreement, I told her, "This is the first time in our entire life together that I've been concerned about the health of our marriage. It's the first time I've been concerned that your actions could lead to our family splitting up. That's not fair, Chris. Do you really think I'm going to screw some guy on the cruise? Sitting here now, I know that you aren't considering cheating on me, but in a few days, you'll be with your sisters and you'll be drinking and partying. 3 gorgeous women. And that type of environment will attract men, and that could easily lead to unintended consequences, especially when 2 of the women are 304s. And Kate? You know I'm right." I could tell that Kate was formulating a response and was caught off guard when I insisted that she knew I was correct. She had the decency to blush. I continued, "You need to understand that I am concerned about a lot of things and not just sex. Are you going to kiss any men? Are you going to hold hands? How about slow dancing, with his hands on your hips, or allowing a man to spread sunscreen over your body while you lay by the pool? Chris, you're being ridiculous. I'm not planning on doing any of those things. But even if they happen, those things aren't that bad." I think my smile unnerved Kate. I asked, "Why aren't you planning on doing any of those things?" "Why? Because a married woman shouldn't be involved with a man in that way. But if a drunken mistake happens, it doesn't in any way mean that it should lead to divorce." I shook my head and shared, "We keep going round in the same stupid circle. You have not considered my very strong feelings and concerns about this trip. If I find out that you have acted in an inappropriate manner, I will not consider your feelings. I'll do what's best for me and my daughters, up to and including divorce. I can't believe that you're talking about divorce. And I can't believe that your decision to go on this vacation has led to us to talking about divorce. Listen," I continued, "I've accepted that you'll be taking this trip. I obviously don't like it, but I accept it. I hope you and your sisters have an enjoyable time. But I want you to understand my concerns and know, without fail, if you cross the line and do something inappropriate and I find out, I'll throw you to the curb in a second." I was surprised when tears streamed out of Kate's eyes and rolled over her cheek. She jumped from her seat, walked to my office door, and over her shoulder shouted, "I'm not planning on doing anything wrong." On the morning of Kate's departure, we were sitting around the kitchen table. The leftover scraps of a waffle breakfast were the only evidence left from our delicious meal. Kate was asking the girls about their plans for the week. When the kitchen clock hit 8 in the morning, Kate looked at me and said, "We need to get going." I told Mickey that we'd pick her up at 8:30 and Jan at 9. "We?" I asked. "Of course. You're driving us to the airport." "Kate, I've got conference calls scheduled for 8:30, 9 o'clock, and 9:45. I'm going to my office." "What the hell's the matter with you? What kind of husband doesn't drive his wife to the airport?" I was halfway to the kitchen door when I answered, "The kind of husband who won't support this vacation in any way." And then turning to the girls, I told them, "Please clean off the table and counters before you turn on the TV." The next 9 years flew. Calais had just turned 13, Kara was 11, and Carla 8. I continued to love the responsibility of being Mr. Mom and being the primary caregiver to the children. Kate appreciated my efforts, as it allowed her to continue as a top administrator in our town's school system, as well as posts on several state of Connecticut and national education boards. I was incredibly proud of my wife, while at the same time enjoying the close bond one had formed with my 3 daughters. It was a Friday afternoon during the last full week in April. Kate had returned 2 weeks earlier from her 9th spring vacation cruise with her sisters. My phone was muted and I was listening in on a conference call. I wasn't scheduled to contribute to the call. Only listen. I was standing by the open office window enjoying the warm spring breeze when Kate's car sped into the driveway. It was closely followed by her sister Jan's car. Kate jumped out of her car and Jan and Mickey climbed out of the other car. I heard Jan ask, "What's so important?" Kate shushed her sister and said, "Let's talk in the kitchen. I don't want to take the chance that Chris will hear us. This sounds like it's more important than my conference call," I thought as I disconnected my phone. Almost immediately, I punched the home security app on my cell phone and navigated to the camera in our kitchen. I watched as the women came through the back door. As Mickey and Jan took seats around our table, Kate poured 2 glasses of wine for her sisters. "Aren't you having any?" Mickey asked. After a pause, Kate answered, "I can't. I'm on antibiotics." "What's wrong with you?" Jan wanted to know. "I can't believe it, but one of the a-holes I slept with gave me gonorrhea," Kate admitted. "Oh shit," Jan said. "You've given it to Chris." "No," Kate yelled. "He's always pissed when I get back from the cruise. We ease back into sex after a couple of weeks. When will your doctor be notifying Chris?" Mickey wanted to know. "I don't think they will. I went to a walk-in clinic in Albany, New York and paid cash. I told them that I was single and the only sex I'd had in the last 6 months was on the cruise with strangers. I had to give the clinic our cruise line information and the first name of the guys I slept with. The medical authorities will try to track down the guy who passed this to me." I didn't need to hear any more and shut off the app. I went to the bookshelf, opened the bottle of Knob Creek and poured an inch. After sitting behind my desk and taking a healthy sip, I realized that I'd been preparing for this moment for a decade and had already thought through the tasks necessary to end my marriage to Kate. I was sad, almost dead inside, but I was determined to look out for myself and my children. I called my personal attorney and told him to start a divorce petition. I wanted the prenuptial agreement enforced. I wanted the house, as I'd inherited from my grandfather. Most importantly, as the primary caregiver, I insisted on full custody of my girls. My attorney agreed that the custody issue shouldn't be a problem. I instructed my attorney to file the divorce papers using irreconcilable differences, but to have a second divorce petition prepared that listed infidelity. I wasn't worried about splitting our banking accounts. Early on, my attorney advised Kate and I to keep separate accounts in case my businesses failed. We each contributed equally to the household budget on a quarterly basis, but kept the remainder of our finances under our own name. I did cancel 2 joint credit cards and paid off the balance using our household budget account. 30 minutes after hearing the fateful conversation, I grabbed the rest of my drink and headed to the kitchen. The girls' conversation died down as I came through the door. Kate looked at me and asked, "Bad day, honey?" I sat at my spot, at the far end of the kitchen table, nodded and said, "Yeah, real bad." The group looked on with interest as Kate asked, "Do you want to tell us about it?" As I was thinking about my response, we heard Calais coming through the front door. Her best friend's mom had given her a ride home from middle school. Calais skipped into the kitchen, hugged her mom and aunts, before circling the table and wrapping her arms around my neck. Calais hadn't seen her aunts since they had left on their most recent cruise. Calais filled her aunts in on her school and sports activities. They teased her about a boy who had a crush on her. I looked around the table and everyone but Kate was absorbed in the conversation. Kate looked at me with a worried expression. A few minutes later, we heard the school bus stop in front of the house and soon after, the front door crashed open. Kara followed Carla ran into the kitchen seconds later. After another round of hugs, Mickey and Jan started quizzing their 3 nieces about their recent lives. As a group, we laughed and talked for well over an hour. When things started to get quiet and I suspected that Jan and Mickey would make an excuse to leave, I said, "I'm calling a family meeting." And then looking at my sisters-in-law, I said, "You'll each be impacted by our discussion. You're welcome to stay." When they agreed, I got up and refilled their wine glasses and poured another inch of bourbon for myself. After placing the glasses back on the table, I asked Kate, "Would you like some wine?" Kate smiled, shook her head and said, "No, thank you." Kara laughed and said, "Wow, Mom doesn't want a glass of wine on a Friday afternoon. What's the occasion?" We all laughed and let Kate answer, "I drank a little too much on the cruise. I'm trying to lose a few pounds." "That's a relief," I said. "What's a relief?" Kate asked. Kate's face turned white when I answered, "I thought you weren't drinking because you've been prescribed antibiotics." The girls turned to Kate and Carla asked, "Are you sick, Mom?" Kate quickly answered, "No, of course not." Everyone turned to me. I took 2 breaths to calm myself and turned to my girls. I told them, "Your mom just lied to you." "Chris," came the scream from Kate. "Your mom is taking antibiotics for a disease called gonorrhea. It's a sexually transmitted disease, an STD. Your mom got the gonorrhea when she cheated on me while on her cruise with her sisters. Girls, your father is lying." Go to your room immediately, were Kate's order. No one moved except for the girls' heads turning in my direction. I took my time and slowly told my girls, I have every confidence that you know, deep in your hearts, that I would never lie to you about something this important. Go to your rooms. Now. Like a tennis match, the three little head turned from Kate to look back at me. Girls, you need to know that I've been in contact with Mr. Phillips. You know he's my lawyer. He's writing up the divorce papers over the weekend. He'll make sure that Mom gets a copy next week. Kate's eyes were filled with rage as she attacked. How dare you involve our children in this private matter? Looking at Kate with as much disdain as possible, I answered, on Tuesday, Alan will be filling the divorce petition. Our private matter will be very public in just a few short days. And then looking at my daughters, I told them, the next year will be very difficult for our family. I want to treat you with respect and tell you the truth from the start. I want you to know that I am not at fault. Your mother has caused this mess. She cheated on us. She's thrown our marriage away and split up our family. As I watched every reaction from my daughters, I wasn't surprised by the tears and sobs coming from Kara and Carla. I was surprised by the lack of emotion in my oldest girl. She seemed determined as she asked, Dad, I want to tell you something important, but I'm afraid you'll hate me. I reached past my sister-in-law Jan and took Kalea's hand in mine. Hating you isn't a possibility. I was confused when Kalea broke down crying. She turned and looked at Kara. When Kara nodded in silent agreement, the two girls hugged and cried together. Look at the mess you made. How dare you upset our family like this? I was closely watching Kalea and Kara as Kate spoke. Her words didn't impact the girls. Instead, Kalea calmed herself and said, 2 years ago, after Mom came home from her cruise, she was sitting right here with Aunt Jan and Aunt Mickey. We were upstairs in Kara's bedroom. Kalea pointed above her head, indicating Kara's room, and continued, I heard Mom, Aunt Jan, and Aunt Mickey talking through the vents. They laughed and bragged about who had the most sex on the cruise. They described some really gross things that I remember word for word, but I don't want to repeat them. I remember everything too, Dad, Kara chimed in. Dad? I answered, Yes, Kalea. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry too, Dad, Kara said. Kalea continued, We know what Mom did was very bad, but we were afraid to tell you. I continued to hold Kalea's hand and reach for Kara. Little Carla didn't understand everything that was going on, but didn't want to be left out. She moved next to Kara and joined the hand-holding. I told all three girls, You don't need to be sorry. Your mother and aunt should have never put you in the position to hear about their disgusting behavior. It's their fault, not yours. I won't live with Mom after the divorce. I want to live with you. I was surprised that Kalea had thought that far ahead. I was gratified and proud when Carla and Kara nodded in agreement. Kate decided to take that moment to continue her stupidity. She opined, The mother always gets custody in a divorce. If your dad doesn't stop this nonsense immediately, you will be living with me. I guarantee it. All three girls looked distressed and turned to me. I smiled and explained, in most cases, the mother gets primary custody. Kalea groaned, until she saw me raise my hand. I continued, They are given custody, because in most cases, the mom is the primary caregiver. Let me ask you a few questions. You don't have to answer out loud. The girls nodded for me to continue. Who makes you breakfast every day? Who packs your lunch for school and cooks dinner? Who does the grocery shopping each week? Who is home with you every evening, while your mom is at her meetings? Who takes you to the doctor for your annual physical or when you are sick? Who coaches your sports teams and volunteers to chaperone school field trips? Who takes you to dance class and theater rehearsal? As an afterthought, I asked, Can you think of a single thing that your mother does on a regular basis that contributes to our family? Kalea jumped up from her seat, circled the table, and jumped into my outstretched arms. It's you, Dad. You're our caregiver and the best dad ever. As Kalea finished, her two sisters had joined us in a giant group hug. I waited a minute until we were calm. Go to your rooms, girls. Your mother, aunts, and I need to talk. I was given 3 juicy kisses on the cheek. The girls ignored Kate, Jan, and Mickey as they headed out of the kitchen. They were leaving the kitchen when I instructed, Girls, I don't want you eavesdropping. Please go to Carla's room. Given the raw emotions of the situation, I was happy to hear 3 giggles and a chorus of Okay, Dad. It looks like you won, I said to Mickey and Jan. I could tell that they didn't want to respond, but I'd forced their hand. What do you mean? Mickey asked. I wanted a faithful and loving wife, and you wanted Kate to be a 304. You've won. Mickey had the decency to groan. I'm not a 304, Chris. I laughed and responded, Your gonorrhea-infested hole is proof that you are a 304. Stop. Please act like an adult. We don't need vulgar language. Jin jumped in and explained, it was only 1 week a year, Chris. Kate has a stressful job and she lets loose while we're away. It isn't a big deal. I couldn't help myself when I said, if I wanted a 304 for a wife, I would have married you or Mickey. Screw you, Chris. Mickey continued, you never complained when you were screwing us. There were nods of agreement from the sisters. Let's see. I was 19, horny, and single. I waited a moment before asking, once you introduced me to Kate, did I ever accept any of your many invitations to continue screwing you? Everyone at the table knew the answer. No one said a word. I don't want a divorce. I'm going to fight to keep our family together. Luckily, Kate, I don't need your permission to divorce you. I've instructed that the divorce proceed under the terms of irreconcilable differences. If you fight me, I'll have the court issue an order to have you tested for STDs. I think the gonorrhea that's infesting the cesspool between your legs will prove you're a cheater. Then I'll change the terms to infidelity and the world will know that you are a lying, cheating pile of shit. Hey sis, Jan piped in. We're going to get out of here and give you two some privacy. Both sisters started to stand, but halted when I said, while you're leaving, I want you to take out the trash. They looked at me with confusion until I pointed to Kate and told them, bring your sister to her room and have her pack enough for a few weeks. Then get her the hell out of my home. Although Kate tried to use family and friends to stall the divorce, she didn't use official channels, as she didn't want the world knowing she's a 304. The mandatory court-ordered counseling only lasted 1 session. It was easy for the counselor to determine that I didn't have any interest in continuing my marriage to Kate. The court accepted the prenuptial agreement. Kate kept all assets associated with her job, and I kept my businesses. Best of all, I was awarded primary custody of Calais, Kara, and Carla. My 2 oldest daughters continued to be hostile to their mother and aunts, but remained close to their maternal grandparents. My baby, Carla, remains close to her mom and sees her on a regular basis. Kate did not have a great life after the divorce. The news about her divorce spread, and to make matters worse, her gonorrhea spread, and she had to remain indoors for an extended time. It turns out that all 3 sisters were infected. Well, karma works in strange ways. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.